So nowadays there's a huge amount of information that circulates and knowledge that surrounds us, and it is oftentimes hard to understand what we need to believe in, because I think it also happened to you, especially in the last 2 years, that we read different positions to the point that we are confused about what we need to believe in, because experts or people that are interested in the topic both sustain complete opposite positions. Maybe you also wonder what's behind academia, if there's any issue, and how it actually works, and how actually research works, right? So if you're interested in this and you want to hear more about the background of the academia and research papers and how knowledge is produced, please keep watching the video after the intro. Welcome back everyone, and if you are new here, my name is Annette and this is my channel Integrated Spirituality, where I help people to develop an independent interpretation of reality and trying to understand together how spirituality is integrated in our everyday life. Specifically, this series of video is going to be called Behind Papers, where we want to understand how research works, how knowledge is produced, and trying to understand and dive deep into research papers together, or also other type of material such as books, or mostly what I would call like formal knowledge. So just to give an overview of what this series called Behind the Paper is going to be about, we will dive into research papers, and again, as I said, like formal knowledge, trying to reflect on that, trying to find together the strong and the weak points. I will always write down the references so you can read by yourself the papers and the material I'm using, so that you can also either give feedback or just, like reading that by yourself. Of course, suggestions will be open, so that if you find any article or material you want to address together, we can do that. But before that, there will be a necessary number of videos where we will go through the research methods and the research process and what are the issues related to it, and also like the negative aspects of academia. And they might be a bit boring because it's more of like a theoretical knowledge I want to share, but I do believe it's necessary, not only for the sake of this series, but also for yourself. I do believe that having these tools, even if just like on a general level, and you're always like, free to further research yourself, I do believe these tools are important, especially because nowadays there's so much knowledge that circulates, and the problem is also that often there are completely opposite positions on a specific topic, so it's also hard to find your position. But that doesn't have to stop us from having tools that allow us to independently think about what we read, what we hear, what we come across. I'm not going too deep into the information, but if you are interested, please just let me know, and not only like leave me feedback or what you think, but also if you're interested in a topic, we can go a bit more into details. Because I will just, skip certain points or just touch them quickly, because I don't think they are necessary for the sake of these first videos. But the point where I can explain these topics, because I'm not a researcher myself, even if I do love research and I hope one day to work into research, I still can explain a bit more. Just to be a bit more specific, I have studied social sciences research at university. We had to conduct a few research. A couple were with a group, and I conducted a research myself for my internship. And then another one together with other people was just like an external internship where we had to write and publish articles, and they were mostly like theoretical research. These first videos, I will use the material that I've been using during my studies, and I will link the material below. So it's mostly what I'm saying comes from my background in social sciences research. But so of course, specific methods are not used, for example, in biology, and some elements are just specific of social sciences research. But that's not the point, because there are some stuff that are just a general background for research itself, without having to be specific, on the type of research you are conducting, like the field where you are conducting research. But still, I hope I can give you some tips that are going to be useful for you, and we can enjoy this process together. But I've always wanted to share this knowledge. Since I was studying at uni, I was like, that's actually very important to know. Knowing how research works and what are the issues inside research, you really realize how knowledge is not that objective, is not the truth as we think. And we still, as just simple citizens, can contribute to knowledge, and our point of view is important. Even if we're not experts, we can be part of the production of knowledge. In this first video, we will mostly talk about the general structure of research, the theoretical considerations that we need to make before conducting our research, that would be epistemological considerations and ontological considerations. And then we will touch upon the research designs and the validity criteria that are necessary to meet in order to conduct, a proper research. So let's start by a very simple definition, kinda. So what actually means to do research? So researching means that we want to find something new, either by updating old research or by discovering something that was never explored before. And the goal is always to improve knowledge on a specific topic in order to also have an effect on reality. And when we want to conduct research, there are a few elements that we need to take in consideration. We need to decide whether we want to take a deductive approach, so that we just formulate a theory and then through research we want to either confirm or refuse the theory, or we want to have an inductive approach. So then we want to just research phenomena and analyze them to the point where we get to a new theory, right? But also we need to be aware of the research that has been conducted so far on the specific topic, so that we know the theories that were elaborated, the concept that we used, the results that that other researchers obtained, right? And the conclusions they came with. And that's very important because, as I said, the goal is either to update or just research something new. So then you need to be aware of what has been done before. And once you are aware of this, you formulate your research questions that oftentimes going to change until the very end. And once you have your research question or more research questions, it depends, then you go and search for your sample, which can be either formed by people or by documents. It really depends on the type of research you conduct. And then you decide the method. I mean, we will go more into details later. I'm just making a general overview. And then you decide your methods and your design. Then you collect the data, analyze them, and then you formulate your theory. There are theoretical considerations that we need to address. And what I'm going to talk about now are the epistemological considerations and ontological considerations. When it comes to epistemology, we can consider that as what we think knowledge is, what we think it is worth exploring, and that we can consider as being valuable and reliable information. And when it comes to epistemology, there can be different positions. We will just explore the two main ones, which are positivism and interpretivism. I'll just describe them in what I think is going to be the clearest way. So positivism is when you believe that knowledge what is worth exploring is just what we can perceive with our senses. So anything that cannot be perceived by them, it's not considered knowledge. And it also means believing that we can actually access phenomena and we can learn about them without having to be influenced by previous theories. but reality is there, and when we perceive that by our senses, we can just come to the same conclusions. And also, it's mostly the mentality and the position, the theoretical consideration that is applied when studying natural sciences. And science is perceived to be objective and with no values attached to it. The other epistemology is interpretivism. I'm just gonna write it down there because I hate saying this word. And so basically this epistemology was mostly elaborated to be in contrast with positivism, because when there was a growing interest in social sciences, or just like, the social world, and so social sciences were developing, people at the time were like, well, maybe positivism is not really appropriate to study the social world, so we are going to elaborate a different position, and that is, as I said, interpretivism. What's the difference is that basically, while with positivism, you want to just explore how people behave. So if you apply positivism to the social world, then it's going to be, oh, I want to understand how people behave. But then with interpretivism, people were like, well, actually, I do believe there's much more behind just how people behave. There's a meaning. So with interpretivism, the goal was to understand also why people behave a certain way and trying to understand the meaning behind that. So really trying to divide the social sciences by natural sciences and trying to understand that these are two different words and we cannot apply the same mentality to both of them. Why is it important for the sake of understanding research and knowledge? Why is it important to be aware of these positions? The position you take makes and shapes the research you make and how you're going to interpret the results, and now or before, like how you're going to study the phenomena, and then later how you interpret the results, and consequently the final results are going to, so the conclusions, the research paper that is produced is going to influence the knowledge that circulates and then making the mentality of people. And maybe these are just small details, because also oftentimes the epistemological position is not shared in the research paper. I mean, it's still important from my perspective to be aware that the researches we read and the papers we read are all produced by people that a priori had a specific mindset. And the other theoretical considerations that I want to address are ontological considerations. So what is ontology? Ontology refers to the nature of entities. So whether we can consider them as already existing out there or as being like shaped and formed continuously. So as I said before, I'm going to address the two main ones, which are objectivism and constructionism. So when it comes to objectivism, it means that reality exists out there and is objective and it never changes, it's already determined and we can only adapt to it and follow its rules. While when it comes to constructionism, it means that reality keeps changing and keeps being shaped by what also lives in reality, right? So us as humans or other living beings keeps being shaped. So it means that we kind of never really know reality, because there's not something out there that we just collect, all the information we can and that's it, but it keeps changing, right? Also, the knowledge on reality is just a perspective and it's not the knowledge, because as I said, it keeps changing, but also the researcher itself, when understands reality, does that from its own perspective. With constructionism, we are like, well, actually what we use to understand reality, the categories, labels, or whatever, they're just socially constructed because we make them, we create them to understand something that keeps changing. I do believe it's important to be aware of these positions, because the way we start researching, the mentality we use to start researching influences what we're going to research, how we're going to interpret what we research, the conclusions we make, and consequently what we share with people, and how knowledge circulates and forms society. Now discuss briefly what also influences research, and these points will probably come back again in the future when we will discuss specific strategies. The main thing that actually influences research is the researcher, because researchers are humans, and as humans we have values in terms of beliefs and feelings. Despite researchers need to do their best in order to avoid any subjective influence on the research, there can still be. And where it happens in the topic you choose, it happens in the research question you formulate, it happens in the methods you decide to use, the design, the strategy, how you draw the conclusions, how you write the paper. So literally the whole process of research is influenced by the researcher. Sometimes it happens that they do it on purpose for different reasons that we will explore together, but sometimes it's just, as I said, unconscious and inevitable. So let's now discuss the quality criteria and the research designs, and also how they can overlap. Again, as I said, I will just touch upon these, and if you want to know more, just let me know. I will make an extension version. And also when it comes to the quality criteria, again, I'm drawing my information from my social sciences research studies, so you can find something different. So let's start with the quality criteria. When it comes to reliability, it means whether the measurements and the methods that are used in a study produce consistent results when they are used again in further studies. So replicability is very similar to reliability, and it means actually obtaining consistent results across studies. I want to answer the same research question. Both reliability and replicability can be considered quality criteria because they want to show when you conduct the same research, you obtain the same results, so that we can have a degree of certainty about specific conclusions. While when it comes to validity, it's mostly like whether the measures that we use really are really appropriate for the study we want to conduct. I would say in general, without being too specific on criteria and whether they are used for quantitative or qualitative research, our research needs to be clear. I mean, researchers need to be clear on the methods and like all the steps they go through, and so that what has been selected in terms of, as I said, measurements, methods and stuff can be properly used to study reality and properly measure reality, and the way that the study is conducted needs to be replicable, so that when other researchers want to do the same study, then they're going to find consistent results. That's important because having consistent results allow us to build a theory and then having kind of a certainty on a specific topic. Moving on the next element we want to discuss, which is research design. Our research design can be considered as being a framework that we decide before conducting the research, in which we elaborate how we want to conduct our research, the framework in which we collect the data, and then we analyze the data. There are 5 main types of research designs, and these are the experimental one, the cross-sectional, the longitudinal, the comparative, and the case study. Just to briefly describe them, when it comes to the experimental design, is when you want to conduct a research that you can, let's say, almost fully control. And just to make an example is, I don't know how you think about psychology studies, when you give like an input and you want to see how the person reacts. A cross-sectional design is when you conduct the same study at the same time but into different groups. So you want to kind of make a comparison, but then it's like having, you take just a big group of people, you split them, you conduct the same research, and you have your cross-sectional design, which is different from the comparative. It's used, for example, in different countries. So it's not the same as taking a group of people and splitting them, but you just conduct the same study into different sites. When it comes to the case study, is mostly a type of design where you want to focus on a specific group, a specific situation, and you're not going to generalize this knowledge, right? Because of course, depending on the type of design, you're going to either generalize or not the results. When it comes to the longitudinal design, is when you want to replicate the same study, but in two different periods, in two different moments. So it can be doing one study today and the next one in 5 years or in 2 years or in a week. And of course, the type of design that you're going to select will allow to fulfill certain criteria more than others. So when we talk, for example, about the case study design, most of the time we're not going to fulfill the replicability criteria, because if our research is conducted so specifically on a specific group, for example, what we're going to find in this group is not going to be found in another study, because if it's very specific, that's not even the goal of that study, to find the same results by doing the same study again. So it's really like a matter of what you want to find and what you want to research, and based on that you need to compromise. This was the first video of the series Behind Papers. I hope you found it interesting and the way I explained stuff was clear and was not that boring. And yeah, so that's the first part where we discussed what it means to conduct research, what are the theoretical considerations that researchers make before conducting a research. We went through the criteria and the research designs, and we're ready to go on with the next videos. So if you found it interesting, please subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to click on the notification bell so that you won't miss any other video. And if you have anything that you want to ask or that you want to address, what I've just discussed in this video, please just leave a comment. I will be happy to just read them and come back to you. After that being said, we will see in the next video. Bye!